Today, I will make sense of a film called Into the Night. Spoilers ahead. Look out and fare thee well. In the initial scene, a man named Terenzio rushes into a Brusselian air terminal. He is noticeably terrifying and is in a rush. The vast majority would think he is failing to catch a plane, however reality can't be further from that. He asks the assistant's work area for any pass toward the west, however figures out the closest one is 2 hours after the fact. In any case, he purchases the ticket just for crossing the terminal. At a similar air terminal, a renowned powerhouse in Inez's video, talking with a companion in New York when unexpectedly, she stifles and falls unconscious. Inez is concerned, particularly since she can do nothing to help her. Outside, individuals who are watching the television see that the television correspondence and live show has passed out before the camera. In addition to that, yet a whole road of individuals are lying unconscious on the ground. The watchers figure it should be some sort of joke, with the exception of Terenzio, who realizes what is happening. He says it is the ideal opportunity for him to act and hurries to the terminal. At the point when a gatekeeper is occupied, Terenzio grabs his gun and requests that everybody move. He races to a flight that is about to take off to Moscow in no time flat. Just a few travelers have loaded onto the flight when he gets inside and holds everybody at gunpoint. The pilot is absent, and the co-pilot Matthew does have any desire to help this psychological militant. As they battle for the weapon, a projectile hits Matthew's palm and harms him. Outside, the travelers alarm and the airline steward Gabriel tries to keep them quiet. Terenzio emerges from the cockpit, inquiring as to whether there is a pilot on board. A lady named Sylvie gets up, in spite of the fact that she is just a resigned helicopter pilot. Under Terenzio's organization, she and Matthew take off with any remaining travelers. The flight are broken because of the slug, and thus, nobody from the plane can contact anybody outside. When the plane is airborne, Sylvie and Matthew make an honest effort to reason with Terenzio, however the man stays inflexible. He says that he is an official relegated to Mediterranean, knows something they don't. After being encouraged, he uncovers the beams of the sun have become lethal. Beginning the following day, the dawn will kill everyone, even the individuals who stay inside. This has proactively begun in eastern nations like Japan and Korea, and the plane will be the following objective if the dawn finds them. Matthew and Sylvie don't trust him and guess that he is intellectually ill. Terenzio likewise recognizes that he could appear to be a nitwit, however guarantees that he is not. Matthew's hand is draining significantly, which could cause an issue over the long haul. One of the travelers named Laura is a home well-being medical caretaker for an elderly person with dementia. She is the just clinical expert ready, so she assumes the liability to assist the pilot. They would having no sewing unit to contain the injury, so they utilize a hot blade. Matthew screams in torment and the travelers alarm considerably more. That's what Matthew knows. Whether they start to protest, everyone's life will be in harm's way. Thus, he lets them know that they will land at an alternate location as per Terenzio's desire, prior to proceeding with their way to the first destination. Matthew trusts that the contender jets are acting to hero them since they were taken at gunpoint. In any case, for reasons unknown, Sylvie feels like they are on their own. A traveler named Ada's has heard them discuss the sun and is suspicious that the pilot is deceiving them. Out of nowhere, a Middle Easterner traveler begins hacking and falls unconscious. Ayaz claims to help him and grabs Terenzio's firearm all the while. Terenzio is locked inside the latrine at Ayaz's structure, and Matthew is asked to tell the truth. The pilot uncovers they are arriving in Iceland on the grounds that Terenzio wanted to head off to someplace west. There the police there will capture the fearmonger and the others will be let free. He likewise enlightens them concerning the sun and how Terenzio figures it will kill people. This sends the travelers into a furor. They start recalling strange things that occurred before they loaded onto the flight and are stressed about their family. Matthew quiets everybody and assumes the liability to save them generally as the captain. A while later, he attempts to land in an air terminal in Iceland, however gets no sign from traffic control. When they can see the ground close up, they notice a few planes have crashed into each other and individuals are going near. They at long last register that Terenzio was telling the truth, however, since the runway is hindered, they can't land. The plane just has sufficient fuel to fly a piece west to Scotland, thus, the chief chooses to do so and trust for the best. He frees Terenzio once again from the latrine, so the man can see everybody what is happening. He disclosed that he learned about the sun by snooping on his senior's discussion. He doesn't know why it is occurring, or on the other hand, on the off chance that it will stop at any point in the near future. All he knows is that assuming they need to survive, they should take off from the dawn. In the interim, the Bedouin man who passed out earlier is still on the floor. He struggles breathing and is going to go into cardiovascular arrest. With his final gasps, he says that he gulped precious stones. The medical caretaker, Laura, makes an honest effort to save him, yet her endeavors go to no end. Simultaneously, they go through an emergency landing in Scotland, where Matthew stops the plane close to a wall. They head outside and their telephones begin ringing with notices from their cherished ones. The web is loaded up with news about dangerous daylight. A big part of the world has passed on, and the other half is sitting tight for their demise. The air terminal is vacant on the grounds that each and every individual who had opportunity to take off has escaped, and the others are concealing in dim spots, trusting that it will safeguard them. Notwithstanding, the news proposes that individuals are passing on even inside the bunkers. Suddenly, they are moved toward by 3 RAF servicemen requesting help. They're just a short time before dawn, so they choose to gather important supplies and fly west. One of the travelers is an airplane engineer, Jacob. He needs to go back to his pregnant spouse to save her, however, for the general well-being of the passengers. He is approached to step back. Subsequent to gathering supplies and filling the plane's tank, they take off once again. One of the servicemen is a pilot and proposes they fly away from the equator to keep away from the sun, getting up to speed to them faster. Their next stop is Canada, where they will fuel up the plane in the future and fix the radio. A while later, the web is fixed and their telephones start to ring. They receive the last messages from their friends and family who have as of now kicked the bucket in Brussels. Then a man finds an article saying that the reason for the catastrophe is the sun's polarity. Another traveler named Horst is an environment-trained professional and understands what a sun's polarity means. He makes sense of that at regular intervals. The sun's attractive field inverts, however, nobody knows why. It affects the world, so not much examination has been finished. However, over the beyond couple of many years, the power of the inversion was becoming more vulnerable. On account of this, Horst thinks the inversion turned out to be significantly more remarkable in the other direction. If what he is talking about is valid, the Earth is being impacted with gamma beams wherever Thessen falls, which is the reason individuals are kicking the bucket immediately. They have no real way to demonstrate the theory on the grounds that the researchers who distributed the article are likewise presumably all dead. Right then, at that point, IAS figures out a news report saying that the RAF servicemen they picked are really psychological militants from Afghanistan. They were captured and were being brought back to their country at the air terminal. Outside, one of them gets into an argument and pushes the elderly person who has dementia. It causes his demise and gains the fearmonger the passenger's disapproval. Sylvie enlightens Matthew regarding the news report, and the two choose to abandon the fear-based oppressors when they land in Canada. A couple of moments later, they land and have 2 hours before dawn. A few casualties of the daylight lie all over the city. The terrorists are approached to search for fixed radio parts in the closest shop. They concur, however, insist on taking Gabrielle and Jacob with them. The issue is that Jacob knows about the plan, but not Gabrielle. Thus, when they are in the shop and Jacob secures the psychological militants in a room, Gabrielle won't accompany him. Jacob doesn't sit around attempting to persuade her. In the end, he comes to the air terminal while being trailed by the terrorists, but Gabrielle is left back in the city. The plane takes off without her. The terrorists follow, hitting a window with a bullet, and are capable. Luckily for the passengers, it just makes a break, so in the event that they keep a level elevation, it will not break. A death's door kid named Dominic is likewise on the flight. As attempts to chat with him, however, his overprotective mother Zora requests that the man disappear. Suddenly, they get a radio transmission from somebody in Hawaii. The discussion is stopped, yet they assume that a few survivors are remaining inside a submerged shelter, which is the reason they are alive. Matthew needs to leave for Hawaii at the earliest opportunity, however Sylvie thinks going there because of an indistinct message would be idiotic. In the meantime, Terenzio is enraged that the commander gets to make all the choices. He fights and everybody comes to an understanding that they will cast a ballot to make a choice from now onwards. At the point when things begin to quiet down, several cautions ring simultaneously, showing an airplane breakdown. After breaking down the problems, Matthew discovers that one of the fearmongers who was following the plane earlier has appended himself to the arrival gear. On the off chance that he stays there, they won't be capable toll, and, consequently, Matthew chooses to fly as high as conceivable so the temperature and need of oxygen will bring him down. In any case, he neglects to consider the broke window. Because of the strain distinction, it breaks, causing mayhem inside the plane. Things fly out of sight as the travelers prepare themselves for influence. Matthew rapidly brings the plane to a lower elevation and Jakku utilizes a wooden load up to close the window for some time. Everyone quiets down, yet Dominic experiences difficulty breathing since his respiratory cylinder flew away. Ayaz thinks about an arrangement and utilizations the oxygen line to make a respiratory cylinder. Zared is thankful and embarrassed that she was unkind to Ayaz before. The chief lets everybody know that Hawaii is no longer a choice since they won't ever arrive at there on time at this altitude. The most practical choice is land in Attu, an Alaskan island. Also, the choppiness wasn't able to dispose of the hanging fearmonger. Ayaz, Jacob, and Terenzio go to the undercarriage and make an opening on the plane's floor to get a perspective on him. Terenzio utilizes his weapon to point into the dull, however the crook pulls it and nearly kills him. Fortunately, Ayaz comes to his rescue and shoots the fearmonger dead. He turns into their legend for a couple minutes before the travelers figure out that he was the explanation the Bedouin traveler died. They covered his body back in Canada where a person saw Ayaz cut his stomach open. Ayaz admits he is a cheat who was carrying jewels from Brussels to Moscow. The precious stones were inside the Middle Easterner man's body with his assent, yet he kicked the bucket since he didn't follow the overreacting guidelines. On hearing the admission, a few travelers fight that Ayaz ought to be deserted like the psychological militants. However, generally vote falls in support of Ayaz. As a result, he is bound in the flying sound. In the accompanying scene, they land in Alaska and top off the tank again prior to taking off. When airborne, the climatologist, Horst, finds something bizarre. The organic products they got in Canada taste like they have no flavor. He thinks it is on the grounds that the gamma beams are serious to such an extent that they are renovating the nuclear design of the food. The most disturbing aspect is that it decreases the dietary benefit of the food. Assuming this goes on, they will starve to death in a couple of weeks. Matthew recognizes the risk yet guarantees that their essential concern ought to be running away from the sun. He has begun to fail to keep a grip on himself in the beyond barely any hours. Sylvia requests that he take a rest, yet he shouts at her, which is not normal for his ordinary self. The travelers choose to compel him into resting and bring him outside the cockpit. Although irritated, Matthew vows to rest for the following couple of hours. A while later, they pick one more transmission on the radio and hear two gatherings talking. But the gathering just hears them say, Stera 17. They before long sort out that the individual talking on the telephone is a cosmonaut who is in space. They are stunned that somebody like that is alive, yet this also implies he is conversing with the control room, which is on the Earth. With restored trust for survival, they choose to go to NATO Central Command in Brussels, where it all started. At this rate, they will have 4 hours after they land in Brussels until the sun emerges. Thus, they could discover some data about the mystery bunker in the base camp with Terenzio's assistance. Outside, Laura finds Matthew oblivious in the latrine. It just so happens, the injury on his palm has been contaminated and caused blood poisoning. To this end, he had been acting the manner in which he did before. To take care of the issue, they'd have to sever the contaminated tissues. Laura says she can do the activity in Brussels on the off chance that they oversee to reach a clinic. Nonetheless, without Matthew, Sylvie can't set down the plane all alone. The travelers implore her, since she is the nearest to a pilot they have. However, she realizes that she can only land a helicopter. Horst causes her to figure out that on the off chance that she doesn't step up, everyone is going to bite the dust. Following that, Sylvie is made to watch a couple of recordings on the best way to land a plane. However, when she needs to accomplish the work, she overreacts in fact. A forceful choppiness hits, and everyone prepares themselves for awful. Eventually, they go through an unstable landing, but other than that, both the plane and the travelers are protected. Everybody applauds Sylvie and appreciates the moment of accomplishment in the midst of the debacle. Not burning through much time, they partition into 3 groups to do various undertakings. 2 men stay at the air terminal to top off the fuel. So are Laura and her gathering carry Matthew to the closest emergency clinic while Terenzio, Ayaz, and a man named Reid go to the NATO base camp. At the emergency clinic, they find various dead bodies blocking corridors. By the vibes of it, individuals were educated about the passings before dawn and were trying to save their lives. Laura orders everybody to disregard the turmoil and spotlight on saving Matthew. At a similar time, Zara fills her sacks with meds for her child and for the others. Meanwhile, at NATO base camp, Terenzio shows them the gathering room where he first caught wind of the fiasco. They can't go through every one of the papers with the time they have left, so Rick chooses to check whether the observation film has something. When he is away, Terenzio ridicules Ayaz's Turkish drop and the two get into a fight. He unintentionally hits Ayaz, making him fall oblivious and drain vigorously. Someplace else, Reid finds a recording of the authorities discussing a dugout under a dam in Bulgaria. The place's name is Stara 17, exactly the same thing they heard on the radio a couple of hours ago. Before he can return to the folks, Terenzio comes to him and lets him know that Ayaz has as of now left. Rick sees Ayaz's body lying in a pool of blood on the screen, however is excessively terrified to speak. Half an hour prior to the dawn, everybody loads onto the plane. Matthew isn't in his best state, but feels far improved after the medical procedure. Terenzio lets everybody know that Ayaz drove away before them, however they can never again hang tight for him to return. With weighty hearts, they turn over the motors when out of nowhere, a vehicle stops before the plane and Ayaz comes out. In the accompanying scene, Terenzio is being bound in the flight bay. Sylvie lets everybody know that on the off chance that the Bulgaria plan doesn't work, they will not have enough fuel or time to arrive at another objective. At the point when they contact down, everybody should be ready because they will just have 20 minutes to head to the area of the bunker. Ayaz is in the latrine when he gets a seizure. It endures just for a couple of moments, and he thinks it's because he has lost a lot of blood. Notwithstanding, he abstains from telling the others. At the point when he comes outside, he is asked how he needs to manage Terenzio. Not having any desire to condemn him to murder, he permits the person to accompany them to the bunker. A while later, they land at a Bulgarian air terminal and separate into two gatherings, riding two different vehicles. Sylvie drives the main vehicle and leads the way while Ayaz drives the second one. On the way, he gets the seizure once more, making them crash. The principal vehicle has as of now driven far away, and the gathering has no real way to keep up in the brief time frame. At an intersection, Sylvie takes the right turn and arrives at a half-open entryway. A traveler takes a stab at contacting a TAN is sent flying in view of the power. Besides, incidentally, they need to continue pressing a button for the entryway to remain open. To vindicate himself, Terenzio offers to stand by for the others while Sylvie and the gathering head inside. Prior to leaving, Sylvie binds him to the stand so he will not deceive them. It likewise affirms that he may be free when the other gathering arrives. However, Ayaz and the gathering go off in an unexpected direction at the convergence and arrive at a comparable entryway from the opposite side of the dam. They utilize their garments to scale and pass the entry. In the end, they all arrive at the entry to the dugout, despite the fact that they took different exits. The travelers are at last gotten by military men who invite them inside and certify that they are protected here. Terenzio is let be outside, asking God for absolution. As the sun rises, he stands confronting it and requests that it do its best. In the end, he is likewise killed. To realize what befalls the making do,